Can you move to the other side? Come on. Come on. Get up. Move to the other side of the couch.
Come on. Move. Get up.
There's room for both of us. You just have to move.
Come on. Come on.
I know, you don't like it. Is that all the space you're gonna give me? Ridiculous. Hi, my name is Adriana, and today I'm going to do my reading wrap-up for the month of January. Okay, it's a new year and we're in with some new graphics, so let's jump into stats. This is editing Adriana jumping in to say that part of the way through filming, I realized that my stats were incorrect. So the stats coming out of my mouth for this portion are wrong, but the ones I'm showing on the screen are correct. I address it later in the video, but for now, just pay attention to what's on the screen and not what's coming out of my mouth. In the month of January, I read a total of 14 books, totaling up to 2,905 pages. My average page length of my eyeball reads was 363.1. This is a little off. I will discuss later. I'll just discuss it now. There were a couple books that I read both the audiobook and the ebook version of, so I separated out the pages I read with my eyeballs versus the pages I listened to. So this is being skewed a little bit because some of them I only read part of the book, an ebook. You get it. I listened to 79.7 hours worth of audiobooks, and my physical TBR is currently at 37 books. First graph we are going to take a look at is my genre breakdown. I read 8 fantasy, 2 mystery thriller, and 4 romance books. In my audience breakdown, 8 of the books I read were adult and 6 were young adult. This is an interesting graph, and you will never see this graph look like this for the rest of the year. But this is my place in a series graph. I read 9 books that were within a series, and I read 5 books that finished a series. We'll get into that. My format breakdown, 8 of the books I read were audiobook, 3 were paperback, and 3 were ebook. Don't love this, don't want to be spending more, I don't want to listen to more books than I read with my eyeballs, but you do what you do during a readathon. This is my sourced from breakdown. 10 of the books I read were from the library. 1 of them was from the publisher. 2 of them were books I had owned, and another one of them was a gift. And here is my ratings breakdown. I am doing half-star ratings, but here I am just rounding down. So if I had a 3.5 star, it shows up as 3 stars on this graph, which is most of what I read this month is a 3 star. Not exactly what I want to be going for in my goals, but again, it's readathon time and it's gonna be crazy. My average rating between all the books I read was a 3.5. Again, not ideal. But before we jump into readathon craziness and my semi-book by book breakdown, please consider liking and commenting on this video and subscribing to my channel if you like bookish things. Like I said, these stats are wild. Like, this is not a normal month for me. 14 books in a month is too many books for me to be reading in a month. And especially after I just came out with a video talking about how I want to be chill, but I did say Squash That Series doesn't count. And then, you know, in June, Wonder-a-thon doesn't count. Squash That Series. I've been squashing series. I've been squashing around. And I've been having a lot of fun, but because I read so many books, I really want to try to limit this book by book breakdown into basically touching all the series that I have read in and just kind of giving a quick synopsis of the series as a whole, and then just like a yay or nay on the actual installment I read and how much I liked it in comparison to just that series. Hopefully that'll be quicker. I don't know. So the first series I read in this month was the Sigma Force series. My darling, I love Sigma Force. The first installment I read was The Devil Colony. Unfortunately, this is probably my least favorite of the series so far as my reread goes. Didn't really love it. Had a lot of problems. I have a review of it here or here. It'll definitely be down there. Oh no. Man, I read so many books this month, I forgot to put in a book. So my stats are all wrong, but we're just gonna talk about this book that I forgot to put in my spreadsheet. I'm just gonna put it in my spreadsheet real quick. Alright, let this be a lesson on the dangers of reading too fast. You forget to log your books, it messes up all your stats, it messes up your filming. It's a real problem. Anyway, the other installment I read from the Sigma Force was Tracker. This is a novella introducing a character that will be reintroduced in the next installment of the Sigma Force, the next full installment. This is like a 7.5, so it comes in between like the 2 full books. You don't necessarily have to read this. I didn't read this on my first read through of the series, but it's a fun kind of introduction to a character that I adore because this character is a dog. Very much enjoyed that. Gave it 4 stars because it's a dog. It's about a dog. And I love that. The next series I've been reading a ton from is The Trials of Apollo. This is another spin-off series in kind of the greater Riordan-verse of Percy Jackson and the Olympians. This takes place after the Heroes of Olympus, which again takes place after the original Percy Jackson and the Olympian series, so many series removed. And it follows up the god Apollo after he is punished for his actions in the Heroes of Olympus series by Zeus. Zeus turns him into a mortal and puts him on the mortal realm, Earth. And Apollo has to kind of like figure out why he's there, what's going on. There's this great prophecy that has been bestowed upon him and how he earns his godhood back. From this series, I read The Dark Prophecy, Camp Half-Blood Confidential, and The Burning Maze. 2 full-length installments and then 1 novella. The 2 full-length installments have been fun. It's very reminiscent of kind of the original series. I just don't have a whole lot of like nostalgia or like specific love for it, so it just doesn't hit the same. It does read a little bit older. It is definitely more young adult than middle grade like the original series was, kind of more similar to Heroes of Olympus, but it's a good time. And then the little novella Camp Half-Blood Confidential. This is kind of a cute little cheeky in-between book of all of the kids at Camp Half-Blood putting together like a kind of a new orientation video of Camp Half-Blood. So very cute, very fun. I've had a good time with all of these. The next series I read from was Tita Rosie's Kitchen Mysteries. This was the 4th installment, Murder and Maman. These are kind of fun, cozy mysteries. I always struggle with cozy mysteries because it's like, oh, it's fun, it's light, it's whatever, but like they start with a murder. I tend to kind of like forget these as soon as I read them, so like the fact that I read this at like the beginning of the month, I don't even really remember what happened, but I know it had a lot of really great food and some cute character moments. That's what I have to say for these books. So I gave it a 3. That's how I felt at the time. The next series I read from was the King of Scars duology. I read Rule of Wolves. I adore this duology. So this is again like a spin-off of a spin-off series in the greater Grishaverse by Leigh Bardugo. This duology has been my personal favorite. I think that is kind of a hot take in the larger Grishaverse fandom. I feel like a lot of people do not like this duology, but I love this duology. It focuses specifically on Nikolai, and it's a lot more like political intrigue and yeah, I guess just like a lot more politicking instead of just like straight action or like learning montages or heists, I guess. I enjoyed it a lot, mostly because I love the characters of Nikolai and Nina and Zoya. Just like they're all so juicy and I love them. I just feel like maybe another reason I love this is because a lot of these characters show up very, very early on in the series. And so you've really kind of like seen these characters grow and like their arcs over like the entire series like finally come to fruition, and they've just been like working their butts off to like get everything to where it needs to be, and I love them. I love this duology. I gave Rule of Wolves 5 stars. I had a great time. I don't understand why people hate on this series so much because I personally am a big ol' fan. The next series I read from was the Dirty Air series. This series is just kind of like a raunchy romance series taking place, I'm assuming it's going, like, the whole series is going to take place in the same season of F1 racing, because this second book that I read, Collided, took place in the same time frame as Throttled, which is kind of a cool idea. Sometimes it seems like when you're reading a romance series, it's like the entire rest of the world just stops existing when you move on to like a new couple. So like in the first book, you follow this couple and you see their great love story, and then in the second book, they're just like, what's going on? But because all of this is taking place at the same time, it's kind of cool to see like glimpses of like the other couple we followed in the first book and kind of what they have going on at the same time, like looking at our current couple, and like, I don't know. It's kind of fun. It's kind of an interesting idea. But this book specifically, did not like. Did not enjoy. It uses the fridging trope. I don't like that. I didn't particularly love Throttled, the first one. Even in comparison to that, this was not good. This was bad. I think I go into more feelings in my Squash That Series vlog that this is in. This is probably in the second Squash That Series vlog. I think I read this for round 1. So I will link somewhere. The next series I read from was the Tokyo Dreaming is the second book. I don't remember what the first book is called. This is such a fun duology. I loved it. It is like kind of Princess and Diary vibes, where a young woman in California discovers her dad is the Prince of Japan. So she gets like whisked off to Japan to kind of figure out what's what. And it's so fun, and I really enjoyed it, but I ended up giving it 4 stars because I personally did not like the way the love triangle in this second book unfolded, and it made me sad. You know, a love triangle's gonna love triangle, and I tend to be on the wrong side of love triangles. The next book I read was The Weavers of Alamaxa, the second in the, I think it's The Weavers of Alamaxa duology actually, or just Alamaxa duology. I don't know, I can't remember. High fantasy series, really delving into the politics and ethics of revolution, and it's fascinating. I really want more people to read this series because I would love to discuss, like, this book is so juicy. There is so much going on. And I think it's especially like helped by its setting. It is inspired by like Middle Eastern culture, and like the setting is like kind of a Middle Eastern environment. And, you know, looking back at like Arab Springs or something like that, and seeing how these characters interact with their revolution, and also having this like pretty interesting magic system on top of it. So it's kind of like an elemental magic system. We have people of all different classes interacting with this revolution. We get to see it from so many different perspectives, from leaders to just regular people to people who become leaders, and like fascinating. I really enjoyed this series. It can be kind of dry though, so I ended up giving this one a 3. Not to say that I didn't really love it and enjoy it, but like, you can guess this is kind of a dry series if it's really focusing on the politics and ethics and class struggles of revolting. The next series I read in was Dark Olympus. I read the second installment, Electric Idol. So the Dark Olympus series is a dark romance series that takes place in kind of like a urban fantasy setting where there's the pantheon of the Greek gods, but it's like kind of like a modern corporate setting. I don't know, I'm not like really bad at explaining what this series is because like I don't really understand what this series is. It's like a bunch of people with the names of people from Greek mythology just having a lot of sex. I mean, I guess the first one, Neon Gods, did kind of follow like the Persephone and Hades like script. This one, Electric Idol, is supposed to follow Psyche and Eros, and nothing about this story lines up with like mythology at all. And like, I could go into a deep dive. Maybe that would be kind of a fun thing to do when I do eventually finish this series, is how closely each book actually follows its mythology, because this one is 0. They have the same names, and like Eros has the correct parent, Psyche doesn't. So like, it's just wild. The like, I mean, whatever. It was like fine. It was fun. I gave it 2.5 stars. Oh god. I lost my train of thought with that sneeze. Whew. Okay, let's move on. The next series I read from was actually the Percy Jackson and the Olympians original series. So Rick Riordan is revamping this series. Not revamping, adding on to this series with this installment called Chalice of the Gods. This is about Percy's struggle to get into college, which like is funny and clever, and I had a really good time reading it. I really enjoyed it. I got all the old nostalgia vibes. I love Percy and Annabeth and Grover. I'm a millennial. Send me back into that nostalgia and I'll eat it right up. And yes, I did give it 5 stars. The next series I read in was Legends and Lattes. I don't quite know what this series is supposed to be called, but I read Bookshops and Bone Dust. Very fun. I didn't enjoy this one as much as Legends and Lattes. It's like, obviously it's slow. Like if you know anything about what Legends and Lattes is, it's a cozy fantasy. Like I think, what is the tagline? Oh, a novel of high fantasy and low stakes. So like, it's supposed to be slow, but this one, Bookshops and Bone Dust, was just a little too long to be this slow. Like I was definitely slogging through like the middle of it. And I was like, okay, this is cool, whatever. And I think that might also be because like this one obviously focuses on like bookshops and books, and I just don't love books about books. Like that's a very like not bookworm thing about me, is like I don't want to read about books. Just because I like reading books doesn't mean I want to read about reading books. You know? I don't know. So favorite. But I mean, I still enjoyed it a lot, so I give it 4 stars. Am I talking myself out of that 4 stars? I don't know. We don't have time to discuss this. Like, this video is already way too long. The next series I read in was The Wicked and the Divine. This is a series of, I guess it was originally like individual comic issues. It's now been like bound up into separate volumes, but it follows originally what I thought was just going to be the Greek pantheon, but it is like the pantheon of every culture. We got Norse gods, Japanese, Chinese, Egyptian, Greek, obviously. I think there's like some Hindu in there too. I don't know. I don't even know all the gods that are in here, but it's a lot. And it's kind of like the same thing as like Dark Olympus, where it's like the gods live in like modern times, but it's like the gods get reincarnated as like a human, but then they can only live for 2 years. And in like the first volume, one of these gods gets murdered. Oh god, I'm gonna sneeze again. And so like there's this big like murder mystery, and that was resolved in the second volume. But then the second volume that I just read like ends on a huge cliffhanger and is crazy. I am excited to continue on with the rest of the series. Something I will say against this series is that like you have no idea what's going on. At least I don't. I might just be dumb, but like they just throw you in with like very little knowledge of how this world is supposed to work, and you just figure out what you can along the way. And then the last series I read in, I actually finished this installment like minutes before I started filming this video, and that was the Bright Falls Trilogy. I read the second installment, Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail, and I loved this book. Obsessed with this book. I had the best time with this book. I don't know how to tell you that like I loved this intensely. I enjoyed the first one. What is that? Delilah Green Doesn't Care, but like I just didn't really like connect with the characters that much, I think, and I didn't really love the way alcohol was portrayed, the use of alcohol was portrayed in that book. In this book, that like the issues I had with alcohol are like way toned down. We don't get that nearly as much, and I just really like the characters. Like Astrid in the first book was like a huge bitch, but like she gets so much redemption and we learn so much about her, and I just want to like hold her. I'm like, it's okay. It's okay. You're a little baby bird and I will protect you. I love her so much. And Jordan is like, again, another little baby bird that I just want to like, oh, I love you. This book actually subverts one of my least favorite tropes, which I think is super cool. Like you spend the first part of the book thinking that it's like following this certain trope, and it's not, and it's crazy, and I love it. I love it. I love this book. This book is so clever and so fun. Obviously, like, great sex scenes. I think this author does an incredible steamy scene, so I had a great time there. I gave this 5 stars. I love this book. But that is all 15 books I read. Please let me know what your favorite read of January was, and thanks so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next video.